What happens when one of television's brightest stars walks onto a morning show and transforms a friendly interview into absolute chaos? In just 37 seconds, a single comment about British culture would ignite a firestorm that nobody saw coming. This morning's studio was buzzing with the usual energy. Alison Hammond, beloved by millions for her warmth and infectious personality, was preparing to welcome Kaley Cuoco to the famous sofa. The actress had flown in to promote her latest project, and producers expected the typical lighthearted banter that made breakfast television so comforting for viewers across the country. Alison greeted Kaley with her signature enthusiasm, arms wide open, ready to make her guest feel at home. But something felt off from the very beginning. While Alison beamed with genuine excitement, irradiating the kind of warmth that had made her a national treasure, Kaley's smile seemed forced, almost painted on. Her body language was stiff, guarded. She sat down on the sofa with an air of impatience, as if she had somewhere far more important to be. The studio audience watched carefully. Some had queued for hours in the cold just to be there in person. They'd arrived excited to see one of their favorite actresses up close. Now they sat in confused silence, sensing something wasn't quite right. "Welcome, welcome, welcome," Alison said, her voice full of joy. "We are so thrilled to have you here. How are you finding London? I know you flew in yesterday. Did you get a chance to see anything fun?" Kaley looked directly at the camera instead of at Alison and replied, "It's fine. Cold. Rainy. Exactly what I expected. The hotel is okay, I guess." The response landed with a thud. Alison, ever the professional, laughed it off and tried again. Her smile never wavered, even though the coldness in Kaley's tone was unmistakable. "Well, we can't control the weather, love, but hopefully we can warm you up with some good conversation. Your new show has everyone talking. Seriously, everyone in the office has been binging it. Tell us what drew you to this role. What made you say yes to this project?" Kaley shifted in her seat, crossing her arms defensively. "I mean, it's a job. It's what I do. I act. People seem to like it. My agent thought it was a good move." Alison's eyebrows raised slightly. She'd been doing this long enough to know when someone was being deliberately dismissive. But she pushed forward, determined to find something, anything that might engage her guest. Alison's smile flickered for just a moment. This wasn't the playful modesty of a star being humble. This was something else entirely. Something colder. Something almost hostile. The host pressed forward, determined to salvage the interview. "You're being far too modest. The reviews have been absolutely incredible. I watched the first 3 episodes last night, and I was completely glued to the screen. That scene in episode 2, where your character finally confronts her sister about the family secret. I mean, I had actual tears streaming down my face. That was powerful stuff. How did you prepare for such an emotionally intense moment?" "You watched 3 episodes in one night?" Kaley interrupted, her eyebrows raised in what looked like genuine disbelief mixed with contempt. "Don't you have anything better to do? I mean, seriously?" The studio fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Camera operators glanced at each other, their expressions mirroring the shock everyone felt. Producers in the control room sat up straighter in their chairs, suddenly very alert. One grabbed a headset, whispering urgently to the floor director. Alison's smile remained fixed on her face, but her eyes showed a flash of surprise and hurt. "Well, that's my job, darling," Alison said gently, her voice still warm despite the clear insult. "I watch things, so I can talk about them with lovely people like yourself. I wanted to give you a proper interview, not just the surface-level stuff. I wanted to really understand your work and share that with our viewers. They deserve that. You deserve that." Kaley let out a small laugh that sounded more like a scoff. "Right. Well, I appreciate the dedication, I guess. Must be nice to get paid to watch television all day." The tension was building like a storm cloud, dark and heavy. But Alison refused to let it derail the segment completely. She was a professional with years and years of experience handling difficult guests. She'd navigated awkward interviews before. Surely she could turn this around. She pivoted to a lighter topic, hoping desperately to find some common ground, something that might crack through Kaley's icy exterior. So, you've been in the business for quite some time now. You've worked with so many incredible people. What advice would you give to young actors who are just starting out? What do you wish someone had told you when you were beginning your career? Don't do morning television unless you absolutely have to, Kaley said flatly, staring at Alison with cold eyes. It's exhausting. It's a waste of time, and nobody watches it anyway. Seriously, who even watches this stuff? Old people who can't sleep? This time, Alison's smile disappeared completely. The mask of professionalism cracked, just for a second. She sat back slightly in her seat, processing what she'd just heard. The insult was direct, undeniable, and deeply personal. But instead of snapping back, instead of giving in to the anger that must have been rising inside her, Alison took a long, slow breath and chose grace over rage. Well, I can assure you that millions of people are watching right now, Alison said calmly, her voice steady but carrying a new edge. And they tuned in specifically because they wanted to hear from you. They admire your work. They connect with your characters. So maybe, just maybe, we can give them something worth their time? Something that honors their loyalty to you? Kaley rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes on live television in front of millions of viewers. The gesture was so dismissive, so openly contemptuous, that several people in the studio audience gasped audibly. I'm here, aren't I? I showed up. I'm sitting on your little sofa. What more do you people want from me? A song and dance? I want you to be present, Alison said, her voice still controlled, but definitely gaining an edge now. I want you to be respectful. I want you to honor the people who woke up early to watch this, who set their alarms and made their tea and sat down with their families because they wanted to see you. I want you to remember that you're a guest in this country, on this show, in this moment, and that kindness costs absolutely nothing. Being decent costs nothing. The words hung in the air like smoke. Heavy. Undeniable. True. Kaley's face flushed bright red, her neck blotching with angry color. She uncrossed her arms and leaned forward aggressively, her voice rising to a near shout. Excuse me? Are you seriously lecturing me right now? Do you have any idea who I am? Do you know how many awards I've won? Do you know how many people would kill to have me on their show? I know exactly who you are, Alison replied, her composure absolutely unshakable now. She sat up straighter, looked Kaley directly in the eyes, and spoke with quiet strength. You're someone who's forgotten what it means to be grateful. You're someone who's lost sight of why you have the career you have in the first place. And you're sitting on this sofa right now because people fell in love with your work, because they invested their time and their emotions into the characters you brought to life. They want to connect with you. They want to like you. And instead of meeting that love with respect and appreciation, you're treating this entire experience like it's beneath you. Like we're beneath you. Kaley stood up so abruptly that her microphone pack yanked hard against the wire, creating a harsh, scraping sound through the speakers. A technician rushed forward to unhook her. I don't have to sit here and be spoken to like this. I don't have to take this from anyone. You're just a talk show host. You're nobody. You're completely irrelevant. The cruelty of those words landed like a physical slap. The entire crew gasped in unison. Some audience members actually covered their mouths in shock. Alison remained seated, perfectly still, looking up at Kaley with an expression that somehow mixed deep disappointment with incredible strength. You're absolutely right, Alison said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying more power than any shout ever could. I'm just a talk show host, but I'm a talk show host who shows up every single day, rain or shine, to bring joy and light into people's mornings. I'm someone who treats every single guest with respect and dignity, no matter how big or small their name is, no matter whether they're a Hollywood star or a local baker. And I'm someone who will not, under any circumstances, tolerate being disrespected in my own studio, on my own show, eat in front of my own audience. Kaley grabbed her expensive designer purse from beside the sofa, yanking it up with such force that it knocked over the glass of water that had been placed there for her. The water spilled across the coffee table, soaking into the notes Alison had prepared. Nobody moved to clean it up. Everyone was frozen, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is insane. I'm leaving right now, Kaley announced, her voice shrill and defensive. Then leave, Alison said, her voice steady and clear as a bell. She didn't blink. She didn't look away. But understand something. When you walk off this set, you're not just walking away from me. You're not just walking away from this show. You're walking away from every single person who believed in you enough to tune in today. Every person who set their alarm a little earlier. Every person who wanted to start their morning with you. Kaley stopped for a moment, as if she might reconsider. But pride had taken over completely. She turned to the nearest producer and snapped, "Get me out of here. Now." Alison watched as Kaley stormed toward the exit, her expensive heels clicking loudly against the studio floor with each angry step. The sound echoed through the silent space. The host didn't chase after her. She didn't beg her to come back. She didn't plead for another chance to make this work. Instead, she turned slowly to face the camera directly, her eyes finding the lens, addressing the viewers at home with the intimacy and warmth they'd come to expect from her. "Well," Alison said, and despite everything that had just happened, her voice was warm again, almost gentle. "That wasn't quite what we had planned for this morning, was it? That was definitely not in the script." She paused, taking a breath, collecting herself. The vulnerability in that moment was powerful. This wasn't just television anymore. This was real. Then she continued, speaking from the heart. "You know, I've been doing this job for such a long time. I've sat on this sofa and interviewed hundreds of people over the years. Actors, musicians, politicians, athletes, regular people with extraordinary stories. And I can honestly say that most of them, the vast majority, have been absolutely lovely, wonderful human beings. They understand that what we do here every morning, it's not just content. It's a conversation. It's a connection. It's about being real with each other, being present, being human." In the background, raised voices could be heard as Kaley argued with production staff. The microphones picked up fragments of her complaints, each one more demanding than the last. "I want my agent on the phone right now. Do you know how much I get paid for appearances? This is the last time I do anything for this network." Alison heard it all, but chose not to acknowledge it. She kept her focus on the camera, on the viewers, on the people who mattered. "Sometimes people forget," Alison continued, "that fame is a gift, not a right. It's something given to you by audiences who choose to watch your work, who invest their time and emotions into the characters you play. And when you forget that, when you start to believe you're better than the very people who lifted you up, well, that's when things fall apart." A producer approached Alison with a note, informing her that Kaley had officially left the building. Alison nodded, thanked the producer, and turned back to the viewers. "She's gone," Alison announced simply. "And you know what? That's okay, because we've still got a show to do. And we've still got amazing guests coming up who actually want to be here." The audience in the studio, who had been silent throughout the confrontation, suddenly erupted into applause. They weren't applauding the drama. They were applauding Alison's grace under pressure, her refusal to stoop to cruelty, even when attacked. "Let's take a quick break," Alison said, "and when we come back, We've got a chef who's going to show us how to make the perfect Sunday roast. And I promise you, it'll be a much more pleasant conversation than what we just experienced." During the commercial break, Alison sat quietly on the sofa. Her co-hosts rushed over to check on her, offering support and sympathy. She waved them off with a tired smile. "I'm fine," she insisted. "Really, I've dealt with worse." But one of the makeup artists noticed Alison's hands shaking slightly. The confrontation had affected her more than she was letting on. Still, when the cameras came back on, Alison was all smiles, all warmth, all professionalism. The rest of the show continued without incident. The chef segment was delightful. A musician performed a beautiful acoustic set. An author discussed their new book with intelligence and humor. Each guest treated Alison with the respect she deserved, and she returned that respect tenfold. But nobody could stop talking about what had happened. In the control room, producers were already reviewing the footage, knowing it would be replayed endlessly. Social media was exploding with reactions, most of them firmly on Alison's side. When the show finally wrapped, Alison sat in her dressing room, removing her makeup and processing the morning's events. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was the show's executive producer. "You handled that brilliantly," the producer said. "Absolutely brilliantly. You kept your composure, you stood your ground, and you protected the integrity of this show." Alison nodded, but her expression was somber. "I didn't want it to go that way. I really didn't. I wanted to have a nice chat, to learn about her work, to give the audience something fun to watch over their breakfast." "I know," the producer said, "but sometimes people show you who they really are. And when they do, sure, all you can do is respond with grace," which is exactly what you did. Back at Kaley's hotel, the actress was pacing in her suite, phone pressed to her ear as she spoke rapid fire to her publicist. Her version of events was very different from what had actually transpired. In her telling, she was the victim, ambushed by a host who had been rude and unprofessional from the start. "She attacked me," Kaley insisted, "completely unprovoked. I was nothing but polite, and she just went off on me for no reason. You need to do damage control. Now." But her publicist had already seen the footage. The entire exchange had been captured on camera, broadcast live to millions of viewers. There was no spinning this. No way to rewrite what had happened. "Kaley," the publicist said carefully, "and I think we need to talk about issuing an apology." "An apology?" Kaley's voice went up an octave. "For what? I didn't do anything wrong." "The footage tells a different story," the publicist said. "People are really upset. They love Alison. She's an institution over there. And the way you spoke to her, the things you said, it's not playing well." Kaley ended the call in frustration, throwing her phone onto the bed. She couldn't understand why everyone was taking Alison's side. In her mind, she had been the one disrespected, the one treated poorly. The fact that her own behavior had sparked the entire confrontation seemed lost on her completely. Meanwhile, Alison went home that evening to a flood of messages. Friends, family, colleagues, even celebrities she'd interviewed in the past reached out to express their support. The overwhelming consensus was clear. She had handled an impossible situation with dignity and strength. One message in particular stood out. It was from a young viewer who wrote, "Thank you for showing us that you don't have to be mean to stand up for yourself. You were kind even when someone was being cruel to you. That's real strength." Alison read the message 3 times, feeling tears prick at her eyes. This was why she did this job. Not for the fame, not for the glamour, but for the connections. For the moments when television could show people something real, something meaningful. The confrontation had lasted less than 15 minutes from start to finish, but its impact would resonate far longer. It became a teaching moment about respect, about humility, about how we treat others even when we think we're more important than them. Kaley never did issue that apology. She left the country the next day, returning home to face a wave of criticism that followed her across the Atlantic. Her team worked overtime to rebuild her image, but the damage was done. People had seen who she really was when the cameras were rolling and the mask slipped. Alison, on the other hand, went back to work the next morning with her head held high. She welcomed her guests with the same warmth and enthusiasm she always had. She asked thoughtful questions. She laughed at their jokes. She made them feel valued and heard. Because that's what professionals do. That's what good people do. They don't let one bad experience sour them on everyone else. They don't let someone else's cruelty turn them cruel in return. The incident became one of the most talked about moments in British television history. Clips of the confrontation were viewed millions of times online. Think pieces were written about celebrity culture, about entitlement, about the way we treat service workers and people we perceive as beneath us. But through it all, one thing remained crystal clear. When faced with disrespect and cruelty, Alison Hammond had chosen grace. She had stood up for herself without tearing someone else down. She had defended her worth without needing to diminish anyone else's. In the studio where it all went down, life returned to normal remarkably quickly. New guests came and went. New segments were filmed. New memories were made. But the crew never forgot what they witnessed that morning. They never forgot watching their host handle an impossible situation with such poise. And somewhere, in living rooms across the country, viewers never forgot either. They never forgot the moment when a beloved television personality proved exactly why she'd earned that love in the first place. Not through drama, not through spectacle, but through simple, decent humanity. The sofa where Kaley had sat was occupied by dozens of other guests in the days and weeks that followed. Each one was respectful, engaged, and grateful for the opportunity. Each one reminded everyone why these conversations mattered, why bringing people together over morning coffee was such an important ritual. Alison never spoke about the incident in detail after that day. When asked about it in interviews, she would smile politely and say, "We all have bad days. I hope she's doing well." Even in retrospect, even with every right to be angry or bitter, she chose kindness. That choice said everything anyone needed to know about the difference between the two women who sat on that sofa. One saw the show as a chore, an obligation, something beneath her status. The other saw it as a privilege, an opportunity to connect with millions of people and brighten their day. The cameras had captured every word, every expression, every moment of the confrontation. The truth was there for anyone to see, preserved in digital form forever. And the truth was simple. Respect is a two-way street, and when you refuse to give it, you have no right to demand it in return. Alison's fans loved her even more after the incident. They appreciated her refusal to engage in a shouting match. They admired her ability to set boundaries without cruelty. They respected the way she turned a negative situation into a lesson about grace under pressure. For Kaley, the incident became a cautionary tale. A reminder that in the age of social media and instant replay, every interaction matters. Every word is heard. Every action has consequences. And treating people poorly, no matter who you are or what you've accomplished, will eventually catch up with you. The morning show continued its successful run, welcoming guests who understood what Kaley apparently didn't, that being invited into people's homes through their television screens is an honor, not a burden. That the few minutes you spend on that sofa are a gift, not a waste of time. And Alison continued to be exactly who she'd always been. Warm, funny, genuine, and most importantly, kind. Even when kindness wasn't returned. Even when she had every reason to lash out. Even when cameras were rolling and millions were watching. That's the real story. Not the drama itself, but what the drama revealed. It pulled back the curtain on two very different approaches to life, to work, to other human beings. And it let the world decide which approach deserved celebration. The decision was unanimous.